Welcome back to the second video. By now, when I say it will be brief, you probably are not going to believe me anymore because I said that about my intro and it wasn't that brief, really. Sorry. Okay, so what are deep games and why should we make them? It doesn't mean you have to. It doesn't mean that other games are not absolutely legitimate as well. No judgment here. But I think there is something to be said for also making deep games, obviously. What are they? I have a bunch of pictures that I thought are evocative in that sense. Aspects of the human experience: feeling trapped, feeling connected, feeling isolated, feeling like your head is going to explode or just drift away. I don't know what your associations are when you see these images. Or just very mundane things like jealousy. It starts quite early. Deep games are games about the spectrum of the human experience. Everything that makes us tick, everything that touches us deeply, that stirs something up within us, that makes us wonder, is there more, that speaks to our dreams and desires. That's what deep games hope to be about. So when I say it's about the spectrum of the human experience or human condition, what do I mean by that? And here is just a little blurb to maybe put this into words. It's to love, to lose, to persevere, to grow, to die, to overcome, to avenge, to flourish, to dream, to hope, to have faith, to disappoint, to be disappointed, and to deal with adversity. There's so much more, but it's having thoughts about these things and feelings and contemplating them is what is unique to humans. The intricate web of thoughts and feelings we find ourselves entangled with and are trying to navigate and make sense of within ourselves and in relation with our socio-cultural environment. Very often I find myself watching a movie or reading a book because I hope to learn something about me. And I don't know about you, but that seems to be a big driving force for a lot of authors or filmmakers or people who create expressive media, and also their audience, because they see through story their own lives projected back at them. And games have their own means of doing that, but it helps us navigate that human experience by finding examples of how others do that. And games help us explore how we could do that. So I see game design, making games about these topics, as strongly as a tool for self-exploration. It's how it actually started for me, that when I started making these games, I had a lot of insights and aha moments myself. Oh, this is how that works. So this is why this feels that way. Or these elements are connected somehow. By looking at it from the structural characteristics of games, what is the conflict here? What's the goal in this experience? Does this experience have a goal at all? How do I win this? How do I win life? And many things that society tells us you need to do to win life can be very detrimental to our mental and emotional health, because maybe that's not how we are wired at all. Maybe that's not what we want to do. Maybe we don't care about financial success. Maybe we don't care about, you know, the nuclear family or whatever. Maybe we have very different ideas of what winning means for us. But what are those? And how can we explore that? And how can we make that accessible for others to explore as well? What are the different variables at play in our lives, in our experiences, in our conflicts, in our personal dramas and the dramas of others? And what can I take out or put in or tweak to fix a broken system? If I don't have work-life balance, I know this is very banal, but it's the thing. How do I fix this? What are the variables? What are all of the tasks? How do they interrelate? Where does my attention go? And where does my heart go? What do I want to spend time with? So how do I fix the experience of something that is unbalanced in this system? Is there even a win state? And if there is not, it's very well possible, then what else is there that characterizes the experience and still piques a player's curiosity and gets them engaged and wanting to learn more about it. So these are all provocative questions that you as a game designer have in your toolbox to explore the themes of the human experience. And that can be, yeah, quite an experience of personal growth, but I think there are bigger professional risks than personal growth. So that was the side of the designer, right? Designers might want to care about it. But then, of course, we make games for players as well, or mostly, or also, wherever your emphasis lies. So how can we make salient aspects of the human experience tangible to others, enable insightful aha moments, and possibly even profound and transformative experiences? I mentioned it in the video before. I don't think transformation can or should be forced or imposed. I think it's very much about what possibility space can I give for people to explore and then be transformed in a way that is meaningful for them. Which doesn't mean this is random, which doesn't mean you shouldn't put attention to how you're setting up this possibility space. But it depends to a large degree on the player. And do not try and go into this, I will prove this works and everybody who plays this will have a profoundly different idea of certain aspects of life or their experiences afterwards. Don't be a dictator when it comes to transformation. So why should we make them? Why should we make deep games? Because we can. I think that's the simplest answer. Why not? Why should we not go there? Don't be shy. We have a great medium at our disposal, one that's really, really powerful and can afford really profound experiences. So why not the hell explore that? Games, other than other traditional media, enable embodied experiences. And by embodied, I mean a first-person, first-hand experience of something. Because as you act upon the world, however that world is represented through rules and mechanics, whether that's a digital space or a physical space, whatever it is, you act upon it. And the world responds to you. So this is very much like learning in real life. You know that the stove is hot, not because mom told you not to touch it, but because you touched it and it was hot. And in games, we can learn about many things in this first person, first-hand, embodied kind of way. I do this, this happens as a consequence. And it's really, really powerful and very, very different from witnessing somebody else doing it. And I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I'm saying there is a unique opportunity in games that movies don't have. And then there are unique opportunities in movies. I love movies. Or books, I love books, that games have a harder time communicating. But that's not our problem. That's the film people's problem, or the book people's. So games are, through this embodied experience potential, particularly well suited to evoke empathy and enable perspective taking. You can think about people's inner worlds, their inner landscapes, metaphorically, and create these spaces for others to walk through. You have to be careful not to assume that just because somebody played a game, they now know exactly what it's like to have what kind of affliction ever. Of course, it's not the same kind of understanding you could have as with a lived experience, but you can get a glimpse and you can use it as a discussion starter. So I'm very, very careful always to overemphasize the impact of a game. I think games work best within particular contexts that we design around them as well, or that we consider when we design them. Where is this going to be played by whom? Because that plays a very big role in what people do with it, how they process, how they debrief, how they take the experience they had in the game into their lives and transfer it into their day-to-day. But if done well, and if the right game hits the right player at the right time, then it can be a really profound moment of understanding yourself and others. And I think we understand ourselves through others all the time in a much deeper way. And it would be a total waste of games' potential not to make deep games as well. Games did not have a lot of highbrow credibility for a long time, but neither did graphic novels. So social acceptability is also a thing. The worth and social acceptability of each new storytelling medium has always been measured by its capability to provide insight into how humans tick. And before Art Spiegelman made Maus, a graphic novel about the Holocaust, nobody thought that graphic novels could actually be a vehicle for deep ideas. And then somebody didn't care, didn't read the memo, didn't care about it, and did it anyways, made something outrageously critical, outrageously deep, outrageously serious. And suddenly people started looking at graphic novels and comics with different eyes. It's not the medium that dictates what we can do with it. It's us. It's how we use it. It's what kinds of messages we package with it, and how we do this artfully and freely and unconstrained, and exactly how we think is right. And I want games to be that. I want games to be as critical, as mind-bogglingly strange and shaking us up and disturbing us maybe, or calming us and giving us meditative experiences, whatever. Nobody can dictate what games are allowed to be. And as long as you want to make games that are interesting and different, please, by all means, more power to you. Don't let anybody tell you you can't, just because games are supposed to be only fun and entertaining. So we have this established canon of the human experience media that we know are good at tackling the human experience. The literature, yes, the big ones, Marcel Proust, yeah, or even now Disney movies, graphic novels here, they have become to more and more established as vehicles for deep, profound experiences and serious or complex themes. Well, where did it go? Sorry about this. So video games do not really have that kind of history. There has been a verdict from the US court in 1982. That is not that long ago, where it was stated that the plaintiff, Video Games, has failed to demonstrate that video games import sufficient communicative, expressive, or informative elements to constitute expression protected under the First Amendment. It appears that any communication or expression of ideas that occurs during the playing of a video game is purely inconsequential. The plaintiff has succeeded in establishing only that video games are technologically more advanced games than pinball or chess. The technological advancement alone, however, does not impart First Amendment status to what is an otherwise unprotected game. So this treated video games like coffee mugs. There is no freedom of speech because they have nothing to say. And it took a while for this to be overturned and to grant First Amendment protection to video games. And eventually that did happen. But in 1982, the statement was made that this medium is not capable of doing it because there were no games out there, or were not brought to the attention of the court, that this was within their possibility as a medium. I think from our perspective now, this is really mind-boggling. In 2004, Katie Salen and Eric Zimmerman wrote the book Rules of Play, and they too still were frustrated about the reality of the game store and the endless wrecks of adolescent power fantasies, witless cartoon characters, and literal-minded sports simulations. That's the landscape that they found themselves in front of in 2004. And I mean, yeah, I can see that. At the same time, though, Steven Spielberg said this famous quote that really made it through the media at the time: "I think the real indicator that games have become a storytelling art form will be when somebody confesses that they cried at level 17. I'm not sure if tears are necessarily the indicator for the maturity of the medium, Maybe they are, maybe they are not. But the point is, this in 2004 was seen as a visionary quote, as a visionary idea that, oh my God, games could touch us so deeply, they'd make us cry. And this isn't really that anymore, but it's also not the norm yet. A year later, Ralph Koster still says games thus far have not really worked to extend our understanding of ourselves. Instead, games have primarily been an arena where human behavior, often in its crudest, most primitive form, is put on display. There is a crucial difference between games portraying the human condition and the human condition merely existing within games. The latter is interesting in an academic sense, but it is unsurprising. The human condition manifests anywhere. But for games to truly step up to the plate, they need to provide us with insights into ourselves. I take this to mean that, yes, in games, we show who we are by playing them, whether we are competitive or not, and how we deal with certain things in the game, problem solving, whatever. But it doesn't really shed any insight on what moves us on a more deeper level, more profoundly, what could possibly help us grow. So the themes of the games are not necessarily around that, or not obviously so that we actually reflect upon it. And if there is no reflection, if there is no, curious, how does this actually apply to me, then there is not a lot of transformation going on, arguably. And then 2008, the chronology ends here. Clint Hawking, who used to be the creative director at LucasArts and Ubisoft, gave a very F-word heavy rant at the Game Developers Conference. And you can also find his actual speech in the course materials on Student Portalen. And he says things like, games is pound by pound the most creative effing industry in the history of the world. Being creative is easy. Having the courage to create something that challenges people, that's hard. And so there are a lot of these things where he talks about the status of creativity in the games industry. And his main point is that we don't dare to make games that challenge people on this deeper level. We challenge them with twitch skill, we challenge them with puzzles, we challenge them with fighting and adrenaline rush and stuff like that, but we don't challenge their heart. So when he says, why don't we make games that challenge people, then he means, why don't we make games that challenge people emotionally? Why don't we learn from smaller games? And he quotes Passage or The Marriage, because he says, here's a game that's art. And I don't want to get into this whole what is art discussion, because that's another can of worms. And it's also not really that important, as these games, Passage and Marriage, deal with personal relationship in a personal way. And you can say about these games what you want and whether you like them or not, but they did something different. And at the time, this was incredibly rare, if not nowhere to be found in the big AAA games. It just was not standard that you had that kind of deeper emotional interest in a game at all. And then he says some more really interesting things. Why isn't Call of Duty actually about duty? And that raises the question, what is duty? Like, if you really think about it, what characterizes it? That's where it gets fascinating to me. Deep games require us to understand what these concepts are really about and to take them apart and to find the systems through which we can model them so we can emulate the experience of duty. We can allow somebody to have the experience of duty and not just target, hit, kill, move on. And why isn't Medal of Honor actually about honor? So what does honor mean? Rather than being told you're honorable by some fictional context, how do you experience being honorable, doing the right thing? It comes with a sacrifice, but what kind? How do you introduce it? How do you give difficult choices that really challenge people's honor and put it on the line and make them think about it in this way? Would I really do this? Under which circumstances would I do this? How far would I go? If you can make games that get people to be more honorable or understand their limits of honor better. Wouldn't that be fascinating? And then he says something that I find really tricky. He says, the mechanics of trust are not more difficult to model than the mechanics of rope, like how the rope works in a game. Yet still our games are full of daggers and rings and cloaks and bows. It's absolutely correct. Yes, it's all code. We can't do anything. But before we can do it, we have to understand how it works. You cannot code something you don't understand. You cannot create rules if you don't know what these rules are. You cannot program them if you don't know what they are. That's a designer's job, to be able to tell the programmer, or if you have a programmer who is into this, also conceptualize this with you, you have to first sit down and have a conceptual conversation about this. What constitutes honor? What are the rules honor follows? And how do we put them into the game? How do we design conflicts around that? So this was my spiel on why we should make deep games, what they are, why we should make them. And I see you in the next video with an introduction of the course outline and grading and assignments and all of that jazz. Thanks.